So David Drake was one of my all-time favorite authors, and he passed away here a little while ago. And he served in armored cavalry in Vietnam back in, I think it was 71. And he wrote his combat scenes. He wrote science fiction fantasy. His combat scenes were very realistic. And one of his more popular series, and the series that introduced me to him, was the Hammer Slammer series. Elwha Hammer was a colonel of a mercenary regiment, and the series was a number of short stories and novels that uh, were about units in this regiment and the various battles and whatnot that they fought in. And I just enjoyed the heck out of it. It's one of my favorite series, some of my favorite books. And as I said, he's one of my favorite authors. And I was saddened to hear that he passed. But there was a miniatures, military miniatures, so miniature wargaming. And I think it was, oh, H.G. Wells was one of the first to publish a set of rules for miniature wargaming. It was called Little Armies. And it's essentially you take toy soldiers, tanks, whatever, and it's a set of rules. You can move them X number of inches per turn. They have X range, and so on and so forth. And they used to do what was called sand table wargaming, and this was used for planning and training at various military academies and whatnot. And you could recreate. You'd use literally a table covered with sand. You could recreate hills, valleys, what have you, and then you could move your troops, and you use string to determine line of sight and all this sort of thing. And it still exists. Only now they'll usually use detailed miniatures of varying scales. And then you hand paint them, whatever. And before he died, there's a company came up with a series of miniatures rules based on his Hammer Slammers books. And it's Hammer Slammers the Crucible. And there was a hardcover published, and it had an introduction by him as well as a history of the hammers and background of the hammers and whatnot, and then the actual rules themselves. And it was designed for 28 millimeter scale miniatures. And again, the rules are you can move these miniatures depending on the unit, X number of millimeters or centimeters or whatever. And then if it's got line of sight, and then you roll dice to see what kind of damage it does, and so on and so forth. And they're really neat. And I was a little bit into the miniatures wargaming, and then later on I got into the hex map wargaming, a little more like chess. It's a little more regimented. I've got a number of games based on the hex. I'm trying to think. I don't think I actually have any actual published rules for the miniature wargaming. But I decided I should probably pick his game up. And well, of course, it's out of print. So I found Brigade Miniatures out of England, and they cater to miniature wargaming of all types. And they sell miniatures from various eras and various units and scales and so on. And they have the Hammer Slammers miniatures in 6 millimeter, 15 millimeter, and 28 millimeter. 28 was the original. Everyone's pretty much standardized on the 15 millimeter. A lot of people are moving to the 6 millimeter. And the set of rules, you can use it as 15 millimeter, use it as 6 millimeter, double it, or you can use it for the 28 millimeter and just read everything as inches. And it works that way as well. But most people, because it makes it less expensive, you need less space to set up. And they will set up detailed models of cities and streets and so on, and then they will fight their battles and whatnot. But I went ahead and pulled the pin on it and got Hammer Slammers a Crucible, and it's sold as a PDF. You can buy it as a PDF, but I wanted a hard copy, and so I ordered it from England. It took all of, I think, like 5 days to get here. It was surprisingly fast, and it's I don't know how many pages it is here. It looks like about 55 pages or so, and it's illustrated. And so Hammer's regiment is in the future. They use primarily ground effects vehicle, hover tanks. The weapons fire plasma bolts, that sort of thing. It's very futuristic. Yet it has a very realistic feel to it. And they have descriptions and scenarios from the various short stories and novels. They've got a couple of alien races. And then they've got, of course, all of Hammer's units, including a number of the commanders. And they've got the complete set of rules for engagements and morale and movement and damage and that sort of thing. And then they've got and then online, of course, you can go online, and they've got all kinds of different scenarios, as well as the specs and the rules for a number of different mercenary units that were described by Drake in his various stories. And then in here, they've also got a timeline for Hammer Slammers, the different planets he was on, and they've got the names of some of the tanks that were known, and then there's the timeline of when the books occurred, when the short stories occurred, and what battles they fought, and so on. But as I said, it was one of my all-time favorites, and so I wanted to just add it to the collection. Don't know that I'll ever play it. I don't have any miniatures for it, although you can use anything for the miniatures, or even print them up and just play with little 2D markers if you really want to. And this is guys will go to great lengths to paint them and make them very realistic, and then they'll build the backgrounds, and they've got bushes and everything. They're the same things like the model trains, and these guys fight uh, amongst the scenery. But yeah, as I said, it's David Drake, one of my all-time favorite authors, and I've got a lot of his books I still need to pick up. I want to get his entire Isles series. I think there's a couple of the Hammers, not their books, but the short stories that I don't have, and he included them in some of the later collections. So I'll probably just have to get some of his updated collections, which will duplicate a lot of the stories I already have, but at least get the complete set of them. And a couple of the novels are some of my all-time favorites. I think The Voyage is probably my favorite book of all time, fiction book. Um, and it's in Hammer's universe. But yeah, so I got Hammer Slammers, the digital Crucible. Got the hard copy, soft cover, set of miniature wargaming rules for David Drake's universe.